just glad anyone's attempting to pay attention to women's basketball. You know, I wish I could just talk about the game and how great it was. But instead, we're talking about trash talking during a sports game. A sports game for a national title. I don't know about you guys, but I, for one, am deeply offended. I thought it was outrageous for Angel Reese to taunt her opponent, Caitlin Clark, with the "you can't see me" hand gesture, even though Caitlin did it first. And how dare she taunt poor defenseless Caitlin Clark even more by gesturing at her again, pointing to her ring finger as if she was going to win and therefore get an actual championship ring on her actual finger. Well, she did win. So at least it wasn't all for nothing. If anyone watching this is not American or just not into sports in general and is completely lost on what I'm talking about, let me give you a bit of a backstory. The National Collegiate Athletic Association, also known as the NCAA, has a tournament every year in which men's basketball teams from various colleges and universities from across the country compete to win the national title at the Division I level. It's often referred to as March Madness, as it mostly occurs during the month of March, and is one of the biggest annual sporting events in the US. And oh yeah, UConn won, but anyway, fuck that. Let's talk about the often overlooked women's version of that tournament. Women's basketball, or really any women's sport in general, whether it be Division I or at the professional level, is pretty much a joke to people. I mean, obviously we'd much rather see gigantically muscular men that are like 6'7" and above perform like savages and aggressively dunk on other players. That's what we live for. Now that's entertaining to watch. And you know, us women, we're just boring, I guess. So no one ever really watches or talks about the NCAA women's basketball tournament, but this year, it was all anyone could talk about for days, it seemed. But not really because of the game itself and how incredibly these women performed on both teams, but especially LSU. The Louisiana State University Tigers took on the University of Iowa Hawkeyes, and it ended up being the most watched NCAA women's basketball game of all time, which is kind of wild to think about. Firstly, let me just say this. I watched the 12 minutes of highlights on the ESPN YouTube channel, and as a former fan of professional men's basketball, I was just in awe of how these girls played their asses off during this game. Shout out Jasmine Carson and Alexis Morris from the LSU team, dude. Like, they absolutely bodied basically everybody on the fucking court. Jasmine during the first half, Alexis during the second. It was so fun to watch. Caitlin Clark of Iowa is also just a fucking beast. Like, that girl is of another breed, truly. She's kind of been the talk of the town, the new it girl in women's college basketball, it seems. So I think a lot of people were probably rooting for her to take the title home. And here comes LSU out of nowhere with an all-black starting lineup. Like, nah, not today, Caitlin. That was another interesting factor in all of this. LSU had all black starters and Iowa had all white starters. So that's pretty contentious on its own right there. It's like the whites versus the blacks. Which race will prove themselves to be far superior than the other? So what started all of this hubbub was that Caitlin Clark of Iowa, 2 games before the championship, had waved her hand in front of her face, as in, "you can't see me," popularized by WWE wrestler John Cena, who ironically was totally my husband in my head when I was 10 years old and obsessed with wrestling. Good times. But the gesture originally came from rapper Tony Yayo of G-Unit when he did it in the So Seductive music video with 50 Cent in 2005. And it basically just means, you're not on my level. Like, you can't even see me, ho. So yes, Caitlin did that when Iowa was defeating Louisville to qualify them for the Final Four, which is, of course, the Final 4 teams facing off. And they eventually make it to the final, facing LSU, who had never won a women's national title in basketball. Until this year. LSU actually took down Caitlin Clark and the Hawkeyes to earn their very first championship title. And that should be something to celebrate, I think. But instead, we got butthurt white men crying about LSU player Angel Reese doing the exact same "you can't see me" hand gesture as Caitlin did back at her. You can't get more blatantly obvious with your misogynoir than this. Angel Reese, who is another outstanding player from LSU, did the "you can't see me" towards Caitlin as it was nearing the end of the game, and it was pretty clear that LSU was going to take it home, as well as tapping her ring finger, basically insinuating, "I'm about to get this ring, we about to get this dub, who's talking now?" I mean, trash talk. It's all the rage in many sports, as I'm sure we all know. But when Caitlin did it in Louisville, there was no complaint from what I saw. There was just praise, even from John Cena himself. But suddenly, when Angel does it, she's a classless piece of shit, I guess. I mean, I don't mean to pull the race card, but I'm pulling the fucking race card, bitch. And if you don't like it, leave. I promise this isn't the channel for you. Unfortunately, the reaction to Angel Reese is just further evidence of how us blacks should just be grateful that we're even in the same room as the prestigious whites. And this is definitely not the first time something like this has happened in sports. Rachel Treisman of NPR points out, Jack Johnson, who became the first black heavyweight boxing champion early in the 20th century, was called cowardly for the same defensive style of boxing that earned white fighters praise for using their guile. Kevin Blackstone, Washington Post columnist and ESPN panelist, tweeted that NFL halfback Joe Lillard was a standout in the league in the early 1930s and just as cantankerous as many white players back then, but was castigated for being so. We've been conditioned into judging similar, if not the same, behavior by white athletes and black athletes differently, Blackstone told Morning Edition. And this was another anecdote to go along with that qualitative evidence. And Karen Ataya of the Washington Post notes, part of the appeal of basketball, after all, for players and spectators is the bravado, the rivalries, and yes, the trash talk. Points on the board and W's don't lie. If you've got it like that, you've got it like that. But the recent frenzy over the NCAA Women's Basketball Championship on Sunday, when Louisiana State University defeated Iowa, was a reminder of what happens when women, black women especially, dare to show personality and competitiveness. The white internet went crazy. Reese was unsportsmanlike, people crowed. White male media commentators went to town on her. Classless piece of shit, Dave Portnoy, founder of Barstool Sports, spat via Twitter. Keith Olbermann, host of the Countdown podcast, called Reese a fucking idiot. But guess what? Turns out Clark, who is white, also has a history of taunting players and using the hand wave gesture, because it's what players do. The white backlash shows that for black women playing their hearts out for the respect they deserve, the game is rigged. From Serena Williams to Sha'Carri Richardson, confident, dominant black female athletes have long been demonized, and Reese is no different. And then, after all of that, First Lady Jill Biden was apparently in attendance of the game and suggested that both teams should visit the White House. Really, Jill? I mean, again, it is so blatant. We are once again encouraged to share the top spot with our white counterparts because we inherently don't belong at the top. Black women are supposed to be at the very bottom of the totem pole. That's where we've always been, thanks to society. And I really loved Angel's response. She was just like, nah, fuck that White House. We good. We'll go to the Obamas. Now, of course, this was quickly walked back as Biden's press secretary later tweeted, "The First Lady loved watching the NCAA Women's Basketball Championship game and admires how far women have advanced in sports since the passing of Title IX. Her comments were intended to applaud the historic game and all women athletes." Yeah, that's what the fuck I thought you said. And it looks like LSU, Angel Reese included, will in fact be going to the White House, as is tradition for every championship winning sports team of this magnitude. I just wanted to speak on this because as a black woman myself who did once play basketball in 2nd and 3rd grade, because that counts. It's increasingly frustrating and infuriating just how often Black people, and Black women more specifically, are essentially told to know your place. You do not belong here. You are not worthy of being in charge here. You should be grateful that we even let you in here. We all know that racism still exists in America and around the world in 2023, unfortunately. But knowing it exists doesn't necessarily make it easier to digest or to tolerate. We shouldn't tolerate this type of shit, whether it be covert or overt. I'm not saying Dave Portnoy is racist, although I'm not saying Keith Olbermann is racist, but I do think it's been made clear over the years that things like racism, colorism, misogyny, misogynoir are so ingrained into our minds as children, and as we age, we have a choice to either question our skewed and bigoted beliefs or continue the seemingly never-ending cycle of perpetuating racism, colorism, misogyny, misogynoir. If you'd rather participate in the latter, by all means, do you, boo-boo. Just know that you're the fucking idiot in this instance. But all in all, I am glad that this whole debacle made a lot more folks interested in women's college basketball. Hell, I think I may just start watching next season. Karen Ataya states, while the drama over Reese and Clark has dominated sports talk and social media, we can't lose sight of the fact that these two are stars thanks to their skill and talent, and are representative of how thrilling women's basketball is. All this discourse is exactly what we need more of for women's sports to progress. Sports are about athleticism, personality, and competitiveness, no matter the player's gender. I hope Reese, Clark, and all the other female athletes continue to shine and get the visibility they deserve, like the absolute ballers they are. I don't know about y'all, but I, for one, cannot wait to see who wins next year. Let me know what you guys think about this in the comments. Have any of you guys played basketball competitively? How do you feel about trash talking in sports? Is it just a part of the game, or is it unsportsmanlike and classless? Also, will you be watching the Women's March Madness next year like I am? We can have a watch party, girl. Okay. I also wanted to say thank you so fucking much for 1,000 subscribers. I think now we're at like 1,800, which is fucking insane. That last video blew up like fucking crazy, so it still doesn't even really feel like real, I guess, and I haven't even like completed a super huge milestone, but for me this is a huge milestone, you know. And thank you for a whole heap of views on my last video. I seriously can't thank you guys enough for all of the comments, for all of the feedback, even for the, you know, haters. Thanks for the engagement. I appreciate it. No, thank you for the shitty takes and the great, fantastic takes. You guys are so intelligent, so amazing, and I seriously hope you guys continue to watch me and stay engaged with me so we can have our little community family over here. I love it. I would just love to see it continue to grow. This is something I've wanted to do for a long time. I want this to eventually be my full-time job, and y'all are helping me to hopefully accomplish that feat one day. So again, thank you. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like to appease the algorithm gods. Subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see more of moi. And remember, Dave Portnoy is the real classless piece of shit. Bye.